Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to all the school children, to those in uniform, to veterans who have served, to anyone who ever put the uniform on, and to all of you, I say thank you for coming out. And it wasn't until I stood up I saw how many of you are here. Behind me is a memorial that was first unveiled 103 years ago, further up this road, in a building that now has an Audi dealership. On that day, Harold Pompey Elliott spoke at the unveiling. He spoke vividly of the many stirring incidents from the landing at Gallipoli. When he spoke, it was 1921, so he was speaking of an event only 6 years earlier. At that time, he expressed a hope that the spirit of Anzac would not die out. And as I look out here today, and in memorials throughout our country, it clearly hasn't. On that day, he finished his address and handed out service medals. He shook hands and spoke cheery words to each recipient. After the service, the people assembled outside. A large wreath surmounted the memorial, and nearby another was placed by a bereaved mother in loving memory of her sons, plural. Of those who served in World War I from Doncaster, 1 in 4 were killed. Human brains are not good at big numbers. We are built to compare, not to count. So I want to take you somewhere familiar, the MCG. It has a capacity of 100,000, 95,000 seats, 5,000 standing room only. And I want you to imagine you are standing in the middle, not at the cricket, not at the football, not at a concert, but just you on your own. And as time speeds up, I want you to imagine bit by bit, day by day, as each young Australian loses their life, they appear before you. Some days there will be none, some a few, and then on other days, a somber surge. Very quickly, you will see 593 from the Boer War. And then 1914 comes. On the 25th of April 1915, 620 Australians will take a seat before you. By the end of that campaign, 8,141 will be sitting in the MCG from Gallipoli alone. That's 1/3 of the Olympic stand. As time speeds on, some trickles, some floods, there will be battles like Fromelles, where 1,917 will die in a 24-hour period. The deadliest 24 hours in Australian history. 2% of the War Memorial Honour Roll. The Battle of Somme over a few months will see 6,800, half the Ponsford stand. A few months later in Pozières, another 6,800, the other half of the Ponsford stand. In Bullecourt, over 2 battles, 2,000 will die. Private Murray Elder from Doncaster is one of them. In Passchendaele, in 2.5 months, over 12,000 will die. 12% of the War Memorial Honour Roll, the entire members' reserve at the MCG. Private Eric Hillman from Doncaster is one of them. And then as you stand there in the MCG in silence, at the end of World War I, although we are only a population of 5 million, 61,678 will be sitting before you. Hardly a family left untouched. Their average age, only 19 or 20. And in a short break, the seats will start to fill again. In Tobruk, 749. The fall of Singapore, 1,789, 7,000 by the time the prisoners of war are killed. And on one day, on the 1st of July 1942, 1,054 will take their seats. They are prisoners of war who sank in the Montevideo Maru, 50 rows of the MCG. On the 23rd of March 1945, 9 are killed in a Liberator aircraft, one of those from Warrandyte. In Bomber Command, Australians alone account for 3,500. El Alamein, just under 3,000. Kokoda, 625. Just under 40,000 from World War II. And at that moment, as you stand there, every seat is taken, every standing room is full, and young Australians are starting to spill out onto the field to sit on the grass on the boundary. As we move through Korea, 340, 53 from the Battle of Kapion, 523 from Vietnam, and on one day in Long Tan, 17 will take their seats on the grass. In the Battle of Coral and Balmoral, another 25. And then years later, in Afghanistan, 47 will take their seat, including on the 4th of January 2009, a former student of Doncaster Secondary College, someone who lived off High Street in Templestowe, Greg Sher, will take his seat. On the 30th of May 2011, Marcus Case, whose parents live in Doncaster and is buried in the Eltham Cemetery, he will take his seat. And then as you stand there today, looking before you in silence, 103,044 young Australians who gave up all their tomorrows for our today. We could add many more thousands who died in training, like Jack Fitzgibbon, the son of the former Defence Minister who died in a parachute accident, or the 4 crew of the Taipan helicopter that fell like fallen angels out of the sky off Queensland in July last year. Because the sacrifice of those who died in training is just as meaningful as those who died in operations. And what of those left behind? Imagine another MCG in silence, full of mums, another full of dads, many multiples more of brothers and sisters, 2 more MCGs of wounded, and an unknown number who succumbed to unseen wounds and took their own lives. And one of those was the person who stood in a ceremony like I am right now, Brigadier Pompey Elliott, who 10 years after opening this memorial took his own life in 1931. Because Anzac Day is not about glorifying war, it is about bearing witness to the aftermath of sacrifice. It is about dedicating ourselves to a life of purpose and courage. Shortly after me, there will be an ode, the last post, and 2 minutes of silence. In that silence, imagine you are standing in the MCG with 103,000 looking back at you. And at the end, when you say, "Lest we forget," know this: you are telling them, lest we forget who you were, lest we forget what you did, lest we forget what you gave up, and lest we forget who you left behind. And as the sun comes up, turn your mind to their last memory of home. And know it was a happy one, because they thought of a place that wasn't just home to their family and friends. They thought of a place that stood for something, a place that still does, a place worthy of them, a place called Australia, a place worth fighting for, lest we forget.